5 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few kickers I would start this week. The first guy, Daniel Carlson, the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders here, they got a tough matchup at the Kansas City Chiefs here in a Monday Night Football game. But Daniel Carlson, once again, another great week for him in week 4 with 10 fantasy points, 2 20 to 29 yarders, 2 30 to 39 yarders, 2 extra points, but he did miss an extra point in that one. So right here, Kansas City, you got to keep up the pace in that ball game and put points up in a hurry. And I think Daniel Carlson's been doing that this season here. One of the best kickers in fantasy football. He's got a good matchup at Kansas City. He plays in a pretty solid offense, even though I know the Raiders are 1-3 so far in the season. But right now, he's going to put up points, I think, once again, anywhere from 8 to 10 fantasy points. And he's definitely a kicker I would start this week. The next kicker is Ryan Succop of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Ryan Succop, he's been one of the better kickers so far in the early going here. And he's got a great matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons. I give up the 10th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. To start the year here for Succop, week 1 at Dallas, 14 fantasy points. Week 2 at New Orleans, 10. And the last 2 weeks in week 3 and week 4 with 8 fantasy points in both ball games. So right here versus the Atlanta Falcons, I know we could see Tampa Bay score a lot of touchdowns where he's only going to be limited to extra points, but he's been a solid kicker. At least 2 or 3 extra points I think he hits in this one, and maybe 2 or 3 field goals as well. So Ryan Succop in one of the better offenses in the league. Definitely a kicker to start this week versus a weak Atlanta Falcon defense. The next kicker is Matt Gay of the Los Angeles Rams. So Matt Gay, he's been solid this season and over the last couple seasons, and he's got a good matchup on paper versus the Dallas Cowboys that give up the second most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And this Dallas Cowboy defense is a bend but don't break type of defense. They're going to make you earn it to find the end zone. And in this one, I could see them stopping this offense just a little bit, even though I think the Rams will win the ball game versus the Cowboys, where Matt Gay would have to settle for a few field goals. So the last couple games here for Gay, week 2 versus Atlanta, 6 fantasy points. Week 3 at Arizona, 8 fantasy points. And week 4 at San Francisco on Monday Night Football on a tough loss, 220 to 29 yarders and a 30 to 39 yarder for 7 fantasy points. So right here, week 5 with a good matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. He's pretty much 7 or more fantasy points each and every week for the most part here is Matt Gay. And this week, he's definitely a kicker I would start because I think this Ram offense, believe it or not, will get back on track in a home game versus a Cowboy team. Even though I know this Cowboy defense is good, but I think they'll be in the red zone more than people would think. The next kicker is Greg Joseph of the Minnesota Vikings. So Joseph had a great week 1, and then weeks 2 and 3 he fell off. But then week 4 with a big ball game in London versus New Orleans Saints, 220 to 29 yarders, a 30 to a 39 yarder, 240 to 49 yarders, an extra point and an extra point miss. So right here, week 5, Vikings back home, indoor game obviously. And the Chicago Bears, their defense is middle of the pack, no doubt about it. But I think Greg Joseph's going to have opportunities. And I think this Viking team will score anywhere from 24 to 30 points in this ball game. So Joseph will have few opportunities at field goals, few extra points in this one. And like I said, the Vikings here, they know what the Bears' tendencies are since they're division rivals in that division. And I think this Bears offense could put their defense in a bad position, and that will help Greg Joseph and this Viking offense. I got him as a start this week, and the 5th and final kicker I look to start Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Falcons. So Younghoe Koo, he's had a great fantasy season so far with 3 ball games out of the first 4 with double-digit fantasy points. In the last 2 weeks here for him, week 3 at Seattle, a 40 to a 49 yarder with a 50-plus yarder and 3 extra points. In week 4 versus the Cleveland Browns, 20-29 yarder, 30-39 yarder, 40-49 yarder, and 2 extra points. So right here, week 5 at Tampa, I know this Tampa defense got torched in week 4, but that's the Kansas City Chiefs offense. This Falcon offense is nowhere near that, obviously, especially Marcus Mariota, who's been struggling now over the last 2 games here. So right now, Tampa's going to make it hard, I think, for this Atlanta Falcon team to find the end zone early and often. Even though I like some of the weapons on this Falcon team, Drake London, he looks pretty impressive for the rookie. Kyle Pitts, we know he's an athletic tight end. Cordell Patterson was playing great football till he went down with injury. But I think Tyler Algier could be a decent play as a flex option. But anyway, Younghoe Koo, he's getting opportunities. This Falcon offense, they're not finishing drives in the end zone, but they're in the red zone a decent amount. And once again, I think Koo has a decent ball game here this week. and he's a kicker I would start. So that's a few kickers I would start here for week 5 of the fantasy football season.